Hey Nomads, thank you so much for checking out this kick-off video in a new series that I'm doing where I'm going to rank stuff. I might come up with a better name other than rank stuff, but right now, rank stuff it is. So with this being my first video, please allow me a little bit of explanation. I'm probably going to find a better groove to kind of truncate this, but I'll probably be a little long-winded here in this first video. So basically on my iPod, I still have an iPod because I'm old school like that. You know, I've been building an iTunes library for decades. And one of the things that I've done, because I'm a bit of a nerd and maybe a little obsessive at times, is I have ranked all the songs that I have in my iTunes library. And that allows me to make some different playlists and things. But one thing I didn't realize that it would allow me to do is kind of rank things that's already kind of done for me. So I'm going to share a little bit of that, and it might be a way for you to know a little bit about my music taste, maybe discover some new music, because I admit I probably have some pretty eclectic tastes. So yeah, this might be just kind of a fun discovery, and yeah, just kind of a fun way to help you get to know me through music, which I always think is such the gift of music. So let's roll my theme song, and then I'll kick off this first video in my rank stuff series where I'm going to give you it started as my top 10 albums, but I quickly realized I couldn't narrow it down to that. So I'm doing my top 20, which is actually my top 21. So this is part one of that video where I'm going to go through videos 21 through 11 and kind of rate those and highlight some of my favorite songs from these albums. And then stay tuned. Later on will be part two where I go over my top 10. So thanks for tuning in. Let's roll the theme song and get to it.
A band with just one dude, no reason to fret. I may pretend rock star, it's Nate's one-man duet. Yeah.
All right, I don't know if you're excited, but I'm excited. I was about to say this is going to get exciting, but I don't know if that's going to be accurate, but I'm excited for it. So here we go. Drum roll, please. Coming in at number 21, U2, Rattle and Hum. Now, I don't want to spoil it, but I think this might be the only U2 album that made this list, which is kind of interesting because I was a big U2 fan for a very long time. I particularly love this era, though. You know, in the 90s, they got off into some kind of more quirky, like character type stuff. I thought it was interesting for me, but this, I think, was really their peak, you know, U2-ness, if you will. This album came out in '88. And you may not know that it's actually the soundtrack to the movie Rattle and Hum. And this iconic picture here is taken from a scene in the movie, and I'll talk about the song. It's actually the first one here, Bullet the Blue Sky. Perhaps one of my favorite songs from U2. It's way up there. Stay tuned in the future. I'm sure I'm going to do a U2 ranking my favorite songs from U2. Bullet the Blue Sky is probably going to be way up there. It's got a really cool groove. The bass line is really awesome, and the guitar work in it is so iconic. And this is taken from the guitar solo where he's doing like this really, it's kind of chord oriented. He's hitting a high then low chord. So it's like ba-ba, wow, ba-ba, wow. And then Bono's there holding a spotlight, and he's switching from the guitar to the audience. Such a cool and iconic moment, and gave this really cool album cover picture. So yeah, Bullet the Blue Sky, awesome song on that album. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. One of their bigger hits. So that's a live version. This album is all live stuff. Sorry for the little glitch. I took a coffee break and not the drink, the cough break. So my apologies. All right, so where were we? Desire, that's a really cool song. All Along the Watchtower, they covered this Bob Dylan song, and it's such a great, you know, for 3 chords and the truth, if you know, you know. That song really is only 3 chords the whole way through. But boy, and they really rock it. It's such a great version of that song. Silver and Gold may not be one of their most popular, but I really like that song. And then In the Name of Love, that was like their big, you know, stadium sing-along, really fun. And then All I Want Is You, I think that's a really excellent song. So there you have it. Number 21 coming in, U2 Rattle and Hum. So number 20, I was really surprised that this was so low in this list. I mean, it's an amazing album. It's an iconic 90s alternative album of a generation, and I'm like right in that that target age where this came out. So yeah, I was born in 81, so this came out when I was 10. I was actually a little young. But, you know, by the time I turned 13 and 14 and was really starting to discover my own music that I liked, boy, this was way up there. So, you know, it's got the iconic Smells Like Teen Spirit. Everyone knows that. In Bloom, my 90s cover band does that song. It's one of my favorite to play. And my daughter's favorite song, so she tells me. Come As You Are, fantastic. Lithium, Polly. Polly is such a U-turn on this album. You know, everything is pretty hard and driving, and then Polly is like this acoustic, really stands out, but in an excellent way. Drain You is such a great song, and On a Plane, you know, it was hard to pick them out. I could have just listed the whole the whole track list because they're all fantastic. So again, I imagine this will be another future video ranking Nirvana songs. So here we go. All right. So drum roll again, number 19. What album do we have? Stone Temple Pilots, Core. So this was their debut album. It is so crazy that this was their first album because it just blatantly kicks ass. From the very beginning, Dead and Bloated, he comes in, I think, singing over what I imagine is like a bullhorn or, you know, a megaphone. I am smelling like a rose. Just what a great way to kick off the album. And then the whole band kicks in after he does his little vocal intro. It's like, oh my gosh, you know you're in for an awesome time with this album. Sex Type Thing is such a great song. Wicked Garden. Then, you know, Creep and Plush are probably like the big standout hits from this album. But I also really like Where the River Goes. So if you don't know this album, check those out. Check out those songs in particular. Really fantastic stuff. All right, moving right along. Number 18. Let's see what we've got. Now this one, unless you know me, this one might be a little weird. Bare Naked Ladies, Gordon. This came out in 1992. Again, if you know me, you know that I was a huge Bare Naked Ladies fan in the late 90s, early 2000s. I saw them live a bunch of times. They were, and still are, just amazing live. They improvise songs, and they're funny, and I mean, just about the coolest band that you can see live. I still hold a very special place in my heart for these guys. So, you know, these songs are songs that I really like. Brian Wilson and If I Had $1,000,000 are probably the ones, if you just kind of the general public are going to know any, it's probably those two songs. But check out any of these other songs. For a band that is really goofy and silly, their songs have such depth. In fact, I recently covered The Flag on my channel, so you can check that out. I also imagine there's probably been a short out where I covered Brian Wilson in kind of a weird fashion. I play a bunch of Bare Naked Ladies songs from this album and from all their other albums. They've been very prolific over a couple of decades. But yeah, so that's my pitch for Bare Naked Ladies. I love these guys. They're fantastic. Number 18. All right, so let's take a look at number 17. What do we have next? Soundgarden, Super Unknown. This album came out in 1994. Again, the general public probably knows Black Hole Sun. Spoon Man is probably a pretty popular one. I feel like there might be one other, but I'm not seeing it on this list. You know, Chris Cornell was just a voice of a generation, I like to say. Man, what a range he had, and what an incredible songwriter. And the whole band is amazing. The arrangements are great. The instrumentation this album is so well recorded. It sounds so good. So you see the songs that I like there. But I will say my all-time favorite song on this album is 4th of July. And it's kind of a deep cut, but it is just so foreboding and ominous sounding. And man, it rocks so hard. I love that song. So highly recommend that one. Check it out. All right, let's move on. Ooh, I'm slipping here. Okay, let's move on to number 16. What do we got? Radiohead. Yeah, again, if any of you know me personally, you know I am a huge Radiohead fan. This album came out in '95. I remember listening to this on my portable CD player, my Walkman, so much in high school. Anytime I had a spare minute, I was listening to this album. This album under headphones, like, blows me away. Really cool, right before the pandemic it was either 2019 or 2020. A couple of local bands here in the Phoenix area, Phoenix, Arizona, got together and covered this album song by song. And it was an incredible group of musicians, and they nailed it. In particular, I mean, all the musicians were incredible. But the lead guitar player, this album has iconic guitar work, mainly from Johnny Greenwood. It's hard to say any of them are lead guitar players. They've got 3 guitar players, but Johnny Greenwood is probably the one who is most kind of upfront and doing the really, really inventive work. In this concert that I saw, the guy totally nailed it, and it was awesome. So again, I feel like I could have just probably given you the track list. Every track on this album I think is incredible. I cover a number of these: High and Dry, Fake Plastic Trees, Nice Dream. I've kind of been fooling around with some of the other ones, like Just, Bulletproof, I Wish I Was, I cover, and Black Star, which I think is my wife's favorite Radiohead song. And my personal favorite, and it's hard to say because they're all like personal favorites, but Street Spirit Fade Out is like a masterpiece of a beautiful song. I highly recommend. I'm probably going to say this a few times, but if you listen to one song from watching this video, Street Spirit Fade Out by Radiohead. Unbelievable. All right, so let's move on. Number 15, what album do we have? This one's kind of a surprise. I was really shocked by a lot of these rankings. Some of these albums were not albums that I would have thought of. But again, this is based on how I've ranked my iTunes library song by song. So it aggregated and averaged the average star ranking that I gave all these songs. So, like, the fact that Radiohead was so far down was kind of surprising, particularly this album being so high up there. But as I was going back and listening to it, I was like, yeah, it checks out. I freaking love Squirrel Nut Zippers. This album, Hot, which came out in 1997, really only had one kind of commercial hit, which was Hell. But, man, this is like New Orleans jazz, and this is some of my favorite music. Just instantly, I fell in love with this, you know. But the more that you get to know it, it's just great music. Put a Lid on It is great. They've got a female singer who has this very like stylistic and very identifiable style, if you will. Memphis Exorcism was kind of interesting. I was in a surf band like around, gosh, when was that? Maybe 2010-ish. I'm a little fuzzy on the years. And I loved Squirrel Nut Zippers, and I was like, it's really weird, but we got to turn one of these jazz songs into a surf song. And we did Memphis Exorcism as a surf song. It was one of my personal favorites to play. I don't know if anyone else liked it, but I know I did, so that's all that matters, right? All right, number 14. Let's see what we got. Drum roll. Hey, Radiohead again. This time, OK Computer. Again, kind of interesting. OK Computer was like the big critically acclaimed album. if I just had to blindly guess, I probably would have put the Bends over OK Computer. But again, the way that I've rated the songs says that that's not the case. From the opening notes of this song, so this album came out in 1997, and this, I think, is the only album that I've ever purchased that I specifically remember where I was and what it was like listening to it the first time. Typically for me, I might, kind of like groove to some new music, but I typically don't like new music right off the bat. I have to give it a couple listens through to kind of get familiar with things to where I really start to like it. This album was the absolute exception. I was out in Virginia visiting my sister, and pardon me, another coffee break. All right. So yeah, I was in Virginia visiting my sister and went to Best Buy and bought this album. And I remember listening to it in her living room and I was like, this out, I'd already loved the Bends, so I knew that I really liked this band. But where they went in this album blew my mind. Again, from those opening notes of Airbag, it's got just that impactful beginning. And then Paranoid Android, which I had already heard before. It had been playing on MTV and had that wild music video. And exit music for a film was in Romeo and Juliet, and I'm pretty sure that had come out before this album was released. You internet researchers can correct me if I'm wrong there. Let Down, Karma Police was one of the popular songs. Radiohead never really got like much commercial play, even though critically they were, exalted, if you will. Electioneering is a personal favorite of mine. That song, it just rocks. Climbing Up the Walls, that song is great, but it also, if you want to do a deep dive, go check out some of the remixes that were done. That song has some really cool remixes, and I don't know if you can find it, but Sarah Slean, Slean, did a cover of Climbing Up the Walls that I got from Napster, don't tell anyone, back in the day. And that cover blew my mind. No Surprises, Beautiful Lucky is one that I cover, as well as The Tourist. So these are like ambitious songs to try to play. These are very complicated compositions. These guys are just total geniuses, and I love pretty much everything they've ever done. So, all right. Having said all that I can possibly say to praise them, let's move on to number 13. Get that drum roll going. So when I first thought of doing a top 10 list of albums, I thought, I've got to include this album. This is an album from an artist that I would guess that you probably don't know as the general public. His name is Jude. He had a couple of albums. There was like King of Yesterday and then maybe one other one. He was a singer-songwriter out of LA, and I just love this guy so much. So these are the kind of songs that You Mama You, I think, is the opening song of this album. Charlie Says has got such a great groove. I Do is such a heartbreaking, beautiful song that I love, and I cover that one, and it's really great. Out of LA, again, another kind of groove. As a singer-songwriter, he was able to do a lot of things just kind of acoustic and laid back, but there's a couple tracks that whoever his musician friends were, who he got to get in studio with him, amazing musicians, incredible performance. She Gets the Feeling. I love that song with those kind of soaring vocals with that really cool harmony. And the Asshole Song, which is one that I cover. It's a favorite of mine to cover. I love that song. It's clever, but sad too. He's writing about some pretty heavy and negative things, but then calling himself an asshole, but not in a funny way, but it is still kind of funny unintentionally. Anyways, go listen to that song. It's really great. All right, let's go. This is our penultimate album to be revealed here in this video. So number 12, let's see what we've got. So this was a surprise to me as well. I know I like Collective Soul, like I identify that. These guys are cool. I've seen them live a couple times, really enjoy them. I know that I have a great appreciation for their musicianship, their arrangements, the vocals, the way these albums are recorded. But I never, I wouldn't have thought that they would have made this list. But I certainly wouldn't have thought it would have been this album. I was really surprised when I saw this come up. But as I looked through, you know, Heavy, it was kind of like the popular song from this album. I really like Dandy Life. I think that that's one where some other band member in the band sings that one, not the typical lead singer. Run was the other kind of popular album song from this album, but then not the one. And Crown, I think Crown might technically be a hidden track. You know, this was from 1999, back when when artists were doing that, you know, doing unlisted tracks, or, you know, it would be track 87 on a CD, and, you know, tracks 13 through 86 were just empty. And so, yeah, but it's kind of a fun little time capsule to that, going back to that time. So kind of a surprise, at least for me, Dosage by Collective Soul. So check it out if you don't know it. All right, and number 11, the last one that I'm going to cover. I can't call it number 1 because it's not. It's number 1 of the bottom 10, I guess, if you want to call it that way. But let's see what number 11 is, shall we? Coldplay. Parachutes, their debut album. Again, kind of surprising, but kind of not. Because again, once I went through and listened to these songs, I was like, oh yeah, this album is great. So the ones that I particularly like, Shiver, which might be the opening track. Spies, that's one that I cover. I love that song. I love covering that song. Yellow was kind of their big smash hit from that album. From that intro with the bending guitar is so good. My 90s cover band plays it, even though, you know, came out in 2000, not really a 90s song. I like to joke and say these songs were written in the 90s, so it counts. But yeah, Yellow is such a fun song to play. Trouble is perhaps my favorite song from this album. This was the first song that I heard. I remember where I was. I was out at in Tucson at the Elcon Mall, and I was in their food court, and I saw the video was playing, the music video to this, and when I first heard it, I hadn't seen the video was playing, and I was like, oh, is this Radiohead? Because for some reason it felt like that, maybe it's Chris Martin's soaring range and beautiful vocals, but I was like, oh, you know, is this a new Radiohead song? And then I saw a music video was playing, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's some other band. I got to check out who this was. And I think I went out and bought that album that day and was not disappointed. This album is fantastic. And then Everything's Not Lost, I think, is really interesting because it kind of rounds out this album. This album, you know, Coldplay went on to this monumental career playing sold out arenas and, you know, just monstrous smash hits. And you could kind of see the beginnings of that in this album, but it's kind of humble beginnings. You know, the songs are pretty simple. Chris Martin's range is incredible. His vocal performances are fantastic. All of the instrumentation, you see the foundations and kind of the sprouting of the genius that was to follow. So really enjoy this album. It made number 11. So stay tuned to see the top 10. It'll be coming out here in a couple of weeks, and I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. I know I've talked a lot and coughed a lot, so I'm sorry about that. But thank you guys so much for watching. If it strikes your fancy, please like, comment, share, subscribe to my channel. Throw me a tip over on Venmo at OneManDuet if you feel so inclined, and you can check out all my other social media sites and all the crazy zany stuff that's going on there. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope you guys have a fantastic week. See you later.